And we're live on this Saturday edition. We are expecting it to be a little on the lengthy side. So we're giving you about no lead time. For all you live viewers, expecting it to be a little bit lengthy today. So yeah. Anyway, here's the sun at 193 angstroms. We're looking at 8.5 hours of activity. Look at some other views here. So enjoy the show as we look at these extra views. Here's the color magnetogram. Solar activity very low. There is a density spike in the solar wind right now, buffeting the magnetosphere. But otherwise low activity. 10.7 centimeter radial flux still at 69. So not a lot going on there. There is a plasma filament. Actually, it's more like a series of plasma filaments. So here's the 304 angstroms view. And we're going to look at those plasma filaments from stereo A, as they are right in the Earth-facing region now. And remember, we don't need an X-ray flare in order to see ejecta. Thanks for joining the live chat already, Harry and Nicholas. Cheers. And lastly, we'll look at 171 angstroms before going on to lots of other things. And I mean lots. We do actually see some magnetic looping and a little bit of activity there. A little bit of magnetic interaction located right around where my pointer is. And sorry, you folks who like the purple Epic pen, it's been pulled from the lineup. But we'll make do. We'll figure out something. We always do. So let's just move on here to the smAsho mission, which is to assist study and report on the ongoing formation of a unified theory of physics. As our regular viewers are aware, astrophysics is in the process of being rewritten, along with the rest of physics, really. Also to raise awareness of the general public of the relationship between space, weather, and Earth effects. Welcome to space. You live on Earth, which is in space. Enjoy it. Also to connect and to consult with media organizations to multiply our reach. That's why we have a YouTube channel. And I'm not only the smAsho Mash president, but I'm also a client. Yes, I watch the videos. Also to demonstrate cutting-edge proof-of-concept solutions to problems, to publish scientific papers. No less than 3 are already in the works. To assist mankind by advancing the study of predictive phenomenon in order to do things like adapt no matter what the adversity is. And lastly, to not be ossified in our beliefs and to treat those who are with love, respect, and inclusion to the scientific discussion. But please help us on our mission by supporting us via our affiliate link here at Hemp Lucid. It's our spaced out campaign. So just click the description and view the links below this video. You'll see this Hemp Lucid link. Hemp Lucid producing full spectrum plant tinctures with all kinds of different suspension oils, as well as drip vapes, the Calci THC free designed specifically for athletes, whole plant lip balm and whole plant waxes, body butter, even CBD for your pets. So if you do buy Hemp Lucid products, please visit our affiliate link, buy them through there, help support the channel. Help ensure that these videos will keep coming out, as we have just moved up to a shoestring budget upgrade from our dental floss and bubblegum budget. Here's a real-time solar wind. And we see the BZ has just jumped up into positive territory. Phi angle is riding around 249. And since yesterday, we see a big uptick in solar wind density up to 13.74 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed dropped down to incredibly low levels here, 269, one of the lowest solar wind speeds we've ever covered on this channel. And we've been doing it for over a year now, every single day. We haven't missed one day. In fact, we've been more likely to make more than one video per day, covering things as they happen, practically instantly sometimes. Sometimes it's pure luck, and sometimes it's by design. Anyway, here's the magnetosphere movies. First, we'll look at the density. And we let these play through each day because you cannot access this data in the future. We're hoping University of Michigan allows the geospace model to be accessed in a data archive format. It would be nice. Anyway, there's the density. Nothing to really write home about. Here's the pressure. And we'll see a fairly low pressure here with the solar wind being below 300 kilometers per second, which is very, very low. Again, we'll let the whole thing play through before we move on to the geospace ground perturbations. And we're not going to get on big tech yet, but we are going to get on big tech. Apple, Facebook, Google, and Twitter. You organizations are on notice. Here are the ground perturbations, if it'll load. For those of you folks who are not familiar with things like polar excursions, the Earth is experiencing one right now. As the geomagnetic excursion seems to increase in speed, the South Pole moves from Antarctica into the Indian Ocean toward Western Australia. And we have two North Poles, one over Canada and one over Siberia. Anyway, there are the ground perturbations. These are delta B, which means changes in the Earth's B field. We're going to skip total electron content because there's too much stuff to cover. Please follow us on Patreon. You might be able to get brilliant memes like this. And I'll take the opportunity to say, dear Bernie Sanders, make a wise decision and retire. Your ideas are more stale than Vlad Lenin's suit. Raising money for cycling, another $5,455 by the first day of summer, and we will be at the target. Thanks, donors, as you're making a huge difference. Now, yesterday, I checked out the Appalachian Trail. Right at the border of Schuylkill County, at the Pine Grove Appalachian Trailhead there, right on the ridge of the mountain. And while reading some local articles, I noticed that there were some issues yesterday on the trail. Apparently, some guys were walking around with one guy with a machete and one guy with an axe. And they met up with some guy from Alaska with a gun. Links in the description to the article. Apparently, the guy with the gun pointed the gun at one of the guys. I'm not sure if it was the guy with the axe or the machete. And said, "Let me pass," which they complied with. Later, they were picked up by police, all three of them. No charges were filed, as all parties realized the misunderstanding. Now, there were tales of two guys walking around with an axe and a machete robbing people on the trail, according to the man with the gun. Now, if you've hiked the Appalachian Trail, it's very close to my areas of operations. They've got a great incident reporting page, links in the description to that also. If you're going to hike the Appalachian Trail, I highly recommend you have this link, because this has got all the links for incident reporting on the trail. It's even got stuff about bear encounters, and it's got some bad advice, but mostly good advice. Here's another idiotic thing that happened in the Lehigh Valley 2 days ago. Road rage incident ends with attempted stabbing. Bystander holding attacker at gunpoint. Allegedly, some idiot called Matthew Gavilanes, 19, of Allentown, was arrested and charged with aggravated assault, simple assault, making terroristic threats, and driving with a suspended license. What happened was he followed a guy several miles, tried to stab him in a parking lot, got held down. The victim fended off the attacks and held him down until a bystander, lawfully carrying a firearm, held the teen at gunpoint until police arrived. What's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is, if you don't even have a driver's license, maybe don't track somebody down due to a road rage incident and try to stab them in a parking lot and then get beaten up and held at gunpoint. Our cycling sponsor and team, theveloshop.net. And let's just cite one of the athletes who's the current points leader, I believe, in the UCI standings at the local velodrome, Kim Geist. If you want to get in the jerseys, there are still spots available last I checked. So send me an email, smashomash@gmail.com. Also, again, visit the links in the description. Help to support the channel and the cycling as it's part of the proof of concept section in our mission, as we do cover things like health and wellness and recipes and all kinds of stuff, not so intimately related to space weather. So also check out thevelodrome.com, one of the nation's premier cycling facilities, and part of the reason why the Lehigh Valley is one of the world's top cycling meccas. There are various world teams in town right now, including Canada, New Zealand, Norway, and more. So if you're in town, especially on a Friday night, check out the velodrome. Located in Trexlertown, PA, let's take a look at spaceweathernews.com to see that the X-ray flares are non-existent. Just a flatlined X-ray flux, despite that giant plage facing the planet. Magnetometer is looking pretty smooth, and there's really not a lot to note here. I believe the uptick in the solar wind density is just a small CME sputter. It'll probably pop back down throughout the day. It does not look like a coronal hole wind stream, in my opinion, but it's something to keep an eye on, that solar wind speed. If the density drops and the speed goes up, then that's the signature of a coronal hole wind stream. We see a dip in the electron flux, and we expect most GPSs to be working quite well. We see no charging hazards, and we see a highly discharged F2 ionosphere layer, especially on the nighttime side. Once again, highly discharged on the daytime side as well, but especially on the nighttime side. Auroras are very weak due to that extremely low solar wind speed at both poles. Again, 10.7 centimeter radial flux back down to 69. Here's a gone too. There's the magnetic environment of the heliosphere. As you can see, we've just crossed the polarity boundary there. And we are in North Pole associated territory. Keep in mind, this can change at any moment. If that plage suddenly gets more or less active, that can suddenly switch. And it's going to suddenly switch to the other polarity soon anyway. This data, 1 hour and 19 minutes old. By tomorrow, we will be on the other side of this current sheet, possibly. That is, the Earth's magnetic line will move from what you see as green, which is the North Pole field, to what you see as red, the South Pole field. For you new viewers out there, and thanks, new subscribers, this is stereo B, and this is stereo A, giving us a view of the far side of the sun. Speaking of stereo A, let's look at the coronagraph out there, if it will load. There we go. Just blow this up to maximum size. And maximize the data. You see a giant plasma plume sticking out here toward the Earth. You are located out in this area here, farther away in the interplanetary magnetic field. And this is what we use to see coronal mass ejections, to verify them. And it looks like it's flaring up right now. I wouldn't be surprised if some ejecta came out. If you look at just the last few frames, it looks like it's powering up a bit, and there's a bit of a bubble there. So we did see some activity toward the western portion, especially in the 171 angstroms. We're going to view it at 94 angstroms as well at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. Here's where planets are located. Planets. It's two syllables. Planets. Anyway, that's where they are. 2 days until the Jupiter opposition, or conjunction, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's a conjunction, right? Anyway, here's where the things will be in 7 days. Approaching the full moon, and 5 days past the Jupiter conjunction. Here's what's going on above my head. I like to draw the ecliptic in. Jupiter and Saturn are on their way to set as Venus rises. And if you have a low horizon, get a view of that in the morning. It'll be great. Let's look at cosmic rays as we skipped a couple of days here. First, we'll look at a parity in Barentsburg. And I don't know how many times I got to click on something for it to work, but I'll just pretend like I only did it once. Here's a parity. And we see a precipitous downtick has just happened at a parity. Check it out. Precipitous downtick in the last hour, in the last few minutes during our show prep. And a significant downtick at Barentsburg as well. So an interesting turn of events there. Let's check Athens. And I really got to hit this mouse with a sledgehammer later this week. Small uptick at Athens. So we see some disparities in the cosmic ray monitors. Check out Mexico City. Pretty flat there. Mexico City is one where you can access old data, by the way. And here's Moscow. Some fairly significant fluctuations at Moscow. Lastly, OLU and DOMC and DOMB Antarctica monitors. So OLU just saw an uptick, similar to a parity in Barentsburg. So some cosmic rays coming out of the north, folks. Could it be Cygnus X3? We're going to look in a minute. There's DOMC, there's DOMB Antarctica. Nothing to really write home at either of those monitors, although that similar uptick at DOMB Antarctica occurring around the same time as all the rest. So a little bit of cosmic ray flux disparities here. Now, let's look at some transients on the radio burst alert telescope. First, we're going to look at Sagittarius A star, which is the core of the Milky Way galaxy, the massive radio source at the center. And no, we don't say supermassive black hole on this channel. You can say it in the comments, but we say massive radio source. And now I understand why radio astronomers said massive radio source back in the mid-90s already, because some folks already understood a little bit more about astrophysics than perhaps the mainstream, right? So anyway, there's Sagittarius A star's transients. The blue one is the daily. And we see a small uptick in transients there in the past 5 days. Next, we're going to look at Cygnus X1, which is a famous, quote, black hole, end quote, the one that Stephen Hawking and Carl Sagan bet on. And a small uptick in transients there also in the same period. And that is because Sagittarius A and Cygnus are somehow connected through some sort of a dense bridge. Next, we're going to look at Cygnus X3, otherwise known as Deneb, the tail of the swan, in the constellation Cygnus. And we see an uptick in the density of transients there in the past 5 days as well. How do you like that? Is that because Sagittarius A star and Cygnus are somehow connected? Yeah, it's exactly why. Let's also look at Cygnus A, the second most powerful radio source in the entire sky, second only to your local yellow dwarf known as the sun. And we see an uptick in the past 5 days in the density of transients there as well. Don't say I never taught you nothing about cosmology, folks. Anyway, there are links to the Neil Gorell Swift Observatory. Please follow us on other social media, which will censor and shadow ban you out of existence if you give them too much trouble. Companies like Facebook and Twitter and Apple and Google are on notice to stop censoring people because you're ruining the internet or attempting to, and you will fail. So you might as well just, instead of trying to beat us, you might as well just join us since you can't beat us. Anyway, facebook.com/smashomash, gab.com/smashomash. We're on all those social media platforms, as people are very selective nowadays about their social media platforms because so many of them are so junky. Here's one that's not junky, minds.com/smashomash. We've got over 450,000 views there with only 700 subscribers. So if you think the page is dense, it's about as dense as it's pretty dense. Here's me nearly electrocuting my friend. If you weren't aware that I was a giant, sorry to disappoint you. I'm 14 feet tall. Needless to say, I have to buy custom shoes. So please like and subscribe to the channel. And thanks, new subscriber. I think we may have even gained one since yesterday. Shadow banned in the USA. Shadow banned in the USA. Shadow banned in the USA. I was banned. Here's a 4.7 magnitude earthquake here south of Kamchatka. And let's look at the rest of the 4+ magnitudes. Here's a 4.8 at Alaska. 91 kilometers northeast of Kodiak. And that's the largest one they've seen there in a while. Shout out Alaskan viewers if you felt that quake. If your salt and pepper shakers slid off of a shelf, landed on your stove. It's a 4.6 in China. Looks like a downtick in earthquakes, down folk and earth ticks quake. Here's a 5.0 in the southeast Indian Ridge. Very deep quake south of Fiji at nearly 600 kilometers. Here's a volcano rundown, as we've had requests to cover volcanoes. And what do we see here? Nevados de Chilean. All right, so here's Dacono continuing to produce a 7,000-foot ash plume day in and day out. Mauna Loa experiencing earthquakes. Shout out Hawaii viewers. If you're in Hawaii, leave a comment. Let us know what you think of Mauna Loa. A slight increase in tiny earthquakes at shallow depths beneath the summit caldera, as well as a continuing trend of inflation. Is Mauna Loa preparing to explode? Let's hope not. That could be a big volcano. Could do some damage to Hawaii, places like Hilo. If you like doing triathletes and you know where Hilo is, and you know why Hilo is relevant, leave a comment. Fuego producing a 15,000-foot plume. Revenador producing a 15,000-foot plume. Sabancaya intermittent puffs. And Nevados de Chilean with no volcanic ash detected. And despite no ash detected, please do not attempt to do a forward roll over the caldera. Here are your pressure maps. We'll just let this play, as we don't have time to tell you every day how to predict earthquakes. If you'd like to know, please head to quakewatch.net. Ben Davidson's cutting-edge earthquake pioneering site, and look for anomalous low-pressure systems. Anyway, if you're in an earthquake-prone region, please have a plan. The forecast by tomorrow midday is for a big low to be in Canada, as well as south of Greenland. An anticyclone over the northwestern U.S. centered around the Idaho-Wyoming border. Powerful anticyclone west of South America. And nothing else too exciting to really note there. Here's your weather.gov map. I would note insane freeze warnings over most of Nevada, Northern California, South Central Oregon for the second day in a row in that location. All kinds of flood warnings due to runoff because the Rocky Mountains have had record snowpack 2 years in a row, aiding to flooding. More severe weather alerts here in Texas. Sorry to report that yet again. More flood warnings, watches, etc., flash flood watches, and some heavy storms about to hit Florida. Heads up, Mom, if you're actually watching the video. I think it's going to mostly miss you to the north. but it looks like the strongest portion is in the south. So let's zoom in and just totally gloss over the fact that it's snowing in places like Wyoming and Idaho and Montana right now. Do a close-up zoom of this. Man, oh man. So if you're on the Gulf Coast, especially northern Gulf Coast of Florida, that is going to hang around for a while. Look at the water vapor map and figure out why right after we look at lightning, of which there's quite a bit. If you're out here in a boat shrimping with Forrest Gump, you got thunder headed your way. You may want to stay below decks, as when lightning comes down 14 strikes at a time, that's because it's coming out of the ionosphere. And let's do the water vapor map here. We're going to just zoom in on that location there, where shrimp are being sucked up into the air and changed into lobsters due to cosmic ray flux. Just kidding, folks. Just kidding, folks. That's not how it works. Shrimp turn into crayfish first, then lobsters. All right, so there's that situation. And again, that's going to stay in place for quite a while as we have a sandwich. We've got dry air up here and dry air down here, and it's funneling all this moisture right through. And so it's going to stay in place for quite a while as there's not enough moisture leading it to make the low low enough for it to chase. A little bit of fluid dynamics going on there. If you don't understand it, well, I don't know what to tell you. But I can tell you that we do a daily section called That Is an Ass, and that is a hole in the ground. It's a newer segment, as there's a lot of ignorance on our planet despite everybody having access to the internet. Can't figure out how that can be, but it be. To quote Elaine Bennis after he took it out, oh, it be. Check out m-w.com, Merriam-Webster, and talk about some footwear that I don't use. The
flip-flop.
It's also a verb. And let's see. Boy, very relevant there. 1, the sound or motion of something flapping loosely. Apparently Joe Biden's mouth is on that list. Also, a backward handspring, something you shouldn't do over the caldera of Nevado de Chilean. Wasn't aware of that either. Also, a sudden reversal. Are you concerned about a pole flip-flop? A geoelectric pole, a geomagnetic pole flip-flop? 3, a usually electronic device or circuit capable of assuming either of 2 stable states. I seriously didn't know that either. And I actually went to college for computer science for a solid year. Also, a rubber sandal loosely fastened to the body, to the foot by a thong. Let us know if you're using your underwear to keep your footwear on. Just kidding, folks. Anyway, while we're talking about flip-flops, let's talk about America's favorite flip-flopper. Under pressure, Biden drifts leftward on abortion and climate change. Yes. Apparently, he's done a double flip-flop. Now he's got a pair. Because first he was for abortion, and then he was against abortion, and now he's for abortion, and I think he's for the Green New Deal also. Anyway, read the Reuters article. It's at the description. Just click the description below the video, and you'll be able to read whatever Reuters wrote. And I can see why I had this slide before this article. Scientists solve the mystery of the galaxy with no dark matter. Oh my gosh, what a mystery. And you would think that this is something relevant here. But basically, what the article is stating is that it just miscalculated the distance by a margin of error of 25 to 50%. Is it 64 million light years away, or is it only 42 million light years away? Anyway, an article on SciTech Daily, it's all over the internet. You'll find it wherever you like, but if you click the description, down near the bottom, you'll find this SciTech Daily article. They didn't solve the mystery of the galaxy with no dark matter. They just solved the mystery of why they don't understand things like redshift. and why it is so hard to measure the distance to a galaxy since it's far away and we can't use parallax. How about all the world's carbon emissions in one chart? If you're worried about your carbon footprint, I feel terribly sorry for you. Anyway, here's the chart. See if I can get this properly full screened. Now, I would note that China does produce approximately twice as much carbon as the US. And while the US does produce a lot, we're talking about carbon dioxide, folks. Carbon dioxide. If you think that's a dangerous gas to have in the atmosphere, you realize it's been at levels of 3,000 and the Earth didn't burn up. All life on Earth didn't die. And now it's only around 400 and some. Plants stopped growing around 300 and some. So again, we implore you to increase your carbon footprint. If your carbon footprint is too small, please increase it, as the sun is in a massively low state of activity and the oceans are still colding for another 2 years. Here's another Zero Hedge article. Zero Hedge joint. Not by Spike Lee. Scientists now believe black holes could be portals to other galaxies for some reason. Anyway, there are links to the article, and I wonder if Stephen Hawking has yet figured out whether or not he would get spaghettified. Go back to some actual stuff here and shy away from some nonsensical stuff. Again, links in the description, folks. If you want to read the articles, just visit the links. I want to go back to 193 angstroms here, as we see some pretty holy areas here. The North Pole coronal hole is like stretching all the way down to that active region. So it almost looks like the North Pole has weakened again. So we were watching it strengthen about a month ago, and it looks like it's weakened as the coronal hole up there is very large. So some interesting stuff with the polar fields. We're not going to go into too in depth into the measurements of those today, as we don't want the video to be too long. And let's just bring out the chat. Greetings, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in and taking the time to leave a comment. We appreciate that, especially donors. Harry Wire, the conventional belief is that the Earth's wobble lasts about 12,000 years. So the precessional cycle is like 24,000 years or so. And I would note that at the other end of that precessional cycle, guess which star is the celestial North Pole? Yes, it's the tail of the swan, Deneb. So unfortunately, measuring stuff like the Earth's magnetic field is not going to cut it. We have to figure out why the sun does what the sun does. And I'm sure there's a reason why the sun does what the sun does. Some of us are trying to figure it out. And again, I really got to get a hold of Eugene Bagashov. I have not been spending enough time on the computer, and I got to increase my time on the computer for this reason, as there's some very important cosmology, such as what attenuates the local chimney. If you're not familiar with the local chimney, just do a DuckDuckGo search for it. Look up the local chimney. And once again, we've caught a small, I think we actually caught a flare here. And this was completely accidental, or perhaps incidental, or perhaps it's divine providence. So right where the cursor is, see a little flare happen right there. So anyway, let's see here. Harry, I can't verify what Maverick Star says about the magnetic field. I cannot calibrate his magnetometers or verify the data or have time to even look at it because there are so many magnetometers that I just don't see the point. Nicholas Rybert states that flip-flop is a bi-stable state. I'm not sure if that's sexual orientation or gender-based. Please do not misgender presidential candidate Joe Biden. You think the batteries are still charged on his chair, Harry? Let's go back to 171 angstroms, as I just love the view at 171 angstroms, and I prefer to close out the video with stuff I like. As we don't stare at the sun because we're negative people, we view the solar minimum as a huge opportunity to not only study the sun and understand cosmology. When the shield comes down, you can see things that you would not otherwise be able to see. So have a look. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks, donors, especially, as the channel has moved up to a shoestring budget from a dental floss and bubblegum budget. It's time to get out of here, as it's Saturday. It's the weekend. There's a lot of stuff to do, so enjoy it. And enjoy this view of the sun at 171 angstroms. I'm loving it. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.